Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mrs. Butcher Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Singer Erdley?
Here.
Mr. Lusby? Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Each of you should have a copy of of the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. If you'd like to take a moment to look those over for any possible corrections or additions.
Motion for approval, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
And seconded. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Also, in your council packet, you should have a copy of our latest check register, if you could indicate if you received that. Thank you. Now, let's see. With the council's permission, I'm going to slightly change the order of part of our agenda tonight. We have some guests with us from Liggett and Platt. And I think they have another meeting that they have to get to very shortly. So, Jack, if we could go ahead and move that up on the agenda. This would be item 8D, a resolution approving KBI.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Members of City Council, this is a project that we initiated a couple of years ago with Liggett and Platt. It was a Kentucky Business Investment incentive. You recall, and I have, by the way, laid out in front of you, which I'll go through in just a moment, about the process. I'll go through it very, very quickly. But let me first of all, required by KRS that when we ask for final resolution for a project, that we have a representative from the company here. Mr. Walter Jones is General Manager of Liggett and Platt. So let me introduce Walt to come and just give you a brief history of the project, and then I'll go through the process with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Jack said, my name is Walter Jones, and I'm the General Manager for Liggett and Platt. Don't know if you know a whole lot about Liggett and Platt, but we are located at 108 Summer Court. We just recently purchased that building for approximately $5.8 million. And we have purchased some adjacent land to build a parking lot, which is already constructed there. So we've been in Georgetown in the Summer Court building since 2016, working with Jack to get this incentive, and we are happy to be here as well. So that's really all I have. If you have any questions for me. Oh, I'm sorry. We're the largest manufacturer of adjustable beds. So you probably heard of some of our customers like Sleep Number, Craftmatic, Mattress Firm, things like that. So we are the largest manufacturer in America of those beds. That's what we're doing in Summer Court, shipping and receiving, logistics.
It's been one of our...
You need one? Is that what you just...
I said I got one. She said I need one.
I can get you a discount.
Okay.
That's public.
That won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We're on record now.
She wouldn't accept the discount. I
That's
promise
right.
you that.
You have one?
For the council, this has been one of our fairly quiet success stories, the way this has grown and consolidated in Georgetown. So we're pretty proud of this ourselves.
Thank you.
So let me just real quickly, a couple follow-ups to that. Bear in mind, Liggett and Platt did not and has not had a presence in our community at all, period. They were at Triport, they were in other locations in the state of Kentucky, but now they're located in our community. So not just the jobs that they have brought with them, but in this particular case with the KBI, that they are going to show to the cabinet and to us a creation of additional 125 jobs. So when this whole thing is finished and complete, it's going to be in excess of 300 jobs. Brand new jobs, all new occupational tax, all new net profit tax, all new ad valorem tax. So you have the process. I've shown you this 100 times, but just let me take you to the middle of the page. Back in 2016, it says KITFA board meeting preliminary approval. Again, a reminder, when we have a client, it's confidential if they're going for an incentive. So in this case, the mayor and the county judge both submitted a letter to the cabinet saying that they would recommend this to you all as the legislative body. That was not made public until KITFA approved the preliminary. That was done in 2016. A little bit farther, local support resolutions and ordinances. That is exactly what we're doing tonight, as you have done before on a number of clients with KBI. So final approval, Once, if you approve the resolution here, it then goes to the KITFA Board, Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority. That happens in June. Still not over. You go down to the next one, activation. After KITFA approves it in June, they have another 2 years by which to actually activate the incentive, only on the 125 jobs. So that's the process. That's where we are today, and would actually respectfully ask you to consider approval of this. I think it's a municipal resolution. Is that?
It's a resolution.
Okay.
Quick
ma'am.
question, will there still be the 2 locations, or are you moving it all into one location?
Currently there's going to be 2 locations, and we will still have the powder coat and welding at the Delaplane building.
Okay, great.
But all of our manufacturing and assembly will be in the Summerport building.
Shall we read the resolution?
A resolution approving the granting of local inducements to Leggett & Platt Incorporated pursuant to KRS Chapter 154, Subchapter 32. Whereas the City of Georgetown finds that it is a legitimate public purpose of said city to undertake activities for the creation of addition to the retention of jobs for residents of this community in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And whereas the Georgetown City Council authorized the granting of a credit of the occupational license fee in an amount of up to 0.5% for up to 10 years for any approved company pursuant to the Kentucky Business Investment (KBI) program, and in accordance with the tax incentive agreement between the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority and the company. Whereas the City of Georgetown finds that offering the local inducements authorized by the KBI program for the purpose of creating and retaining jobs is in furtherance of the public purpose of said city and will benefit the City of Georgetown by preserving sources of tax revenue for the public services provided to the citizens of Georgetown. And whereas Leggett & Platt Incorporated has applied for the benefits authorized by the KBI for its manufacturing plant located 108 Summer Court, Georgetown, Scott County, Kentucky, and whereas the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority has preliminarily approved the application filed by Leggett & Platt Incorporated, now therefore be it resolved by the City of Georgetown as follows. Section 1, that the City of Georgetown does hereby approve the granting of inducements to Leggett & Platt Incorporated for a project more particularly described in KEFTA, Resolution Number 12-16-2-1153, and the supporting memorandum of agreement attached thereto, as approved by the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority on June 30th, 2016, pursuant to KRS 154-32030. Section 2, the City of Georgetown agrees to forego the collection of 1/2 of the 1% occupational license fee that would otherwise be due, which shall be retained by Leggett & Platt Incorporated for inducements under the KBI program for a term beginning at final approval and ending no later than 10 years from the date of activation. Section 3, the Mayor of the City of Georgetown is hereby authorized and directed to execute, acknowledge, and deliver on behalf of the City of Georgetown any and all papers, instruments, certificates, affidavits, and other documents, and to do and or cause to be done any and all acts and things necessary or proper for the granting of the inducements authorized by the Act in this resolution. Section 4. This order and the approval contained therein will only impact the eligible company's occupational wages and will not affect the net profits tax imposed by any local taxing authority, including the City of Georgetown. Section 5. This resolution shall be effective upon its passage and approval. The order is approved this 14th day of May 2018.
Make a motion for approval.
And I'll second it even without a discount.
Thank you. Motion made.
Thank you. That's really good.
Any questions for Jack or the company representative?
Much appreciated. Really do. That's what keeps Georgetown moving right there.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. I got a couple more. I'll stay right there.
Yeah. We'll resume regular order and then we'll come back to a couple of other things. If we go to the public comments portion of our meeting, we have Georgetown Community Hospital and the Georgetown Cancer Center talking about the Colors of Cancer 5K. Come on.
Hello, good evening. My name is Bridget Foster. I'm with Georgetown Community Hospital. I do the marketing, provider relations, and community outreach for the hospital.
I'm Erin Buchanan, Ophthalmology Program Director.
And we are here to request your all's approval for the Colors of Cancer 5K on August 18th, Saturday, at 9 a.m. and registration at 8. All the documentation that's been needed has been provided to Tracy as well as Sergeant Bruner. And so So we would like your all's approval.
Motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions?
I only think last year
Powder.
did we
Yeah,
get
no,
pierced
dust.
away in a couple of places?
They did. They did. And we did address that.
Okay.
And Sergeant Bruner and I have already met, and we have already placed the color stations in the appropriate places, as well as we have communicated with the fire department to be on site. So as it is thrown, they are already coming. We've already verified with Parks and Rec, GMS, as well as Georgetown College that all is good with them as well.
Brittany, last year, the before the event was even over,
Got calls.
Oh, yeah.
Brittany was on it.
It
So
called
she
us.
was working on it before we started getting the calls that we got.
That's
Which is
right.
good, though. It made it better.
Yes, you got
Bridget,
calls and
Bridget,
you
I'm
got
sorry.
taken care of quickly.
It did. That same day.
Okay, any questions for Bridget? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all
There
very,
you go.
very much.
Very welcome.
It's a great cause.
Yep.
That was the only public comment that we had is, nope,
No.
no, don't do that. Okay, don't ask for it. Let's see, mayor's comments. The main thing we have under mayor's comments is a presentation of the budget. I'm just trying to think for the benefit, Jack, of some of your customers, if rather than sitting through an entire budget presentation, we've got 2 Lanes Run Business Park transactions to undertake, and it seems a shame to make those principals sit through my budget presentation.
Agreed.
Anything besides budget we can get rid of. You
Yeah.
know, do it if you like.
Move on.
Yeah.
That gentleman here from
Yeah.
Okay.
first reading and order, second.
All right,
Like, Mayor,
with
it's up to you.
council's permission, I'm just going to take this agenda in a more audience-friendly
There you
manner.
go.
Sure.
And if anybody wants to stay for the budget presentation, you're certainly invited to do so. But if we could first, if we go to item 8 on the agenda under city attorney, we have second reading of the ordinance closing Bell Avenue that Mr. Thompson sponsored. And we can, I think, read that by summary and take any questions that there might be.
An ordinance closing a portion of the public right-of-way known as Bell Avenue. Summary. Pursuant to KRS 82.405, makes findings of fact, closes a portion of the right-of-way known as Bell Avenue between Walnut Street and Chestnut Street, authorizes a quit claim deed to the abutting property owners, and provides for an effective date upon passage and publication. Publicly introduced and read for the first time April 23rd, 2018. Publicly read the second time May 14th, 2018.
Motion, Mayor.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Pretty straightforward action. If there are no questions, we'll call the roll.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mrs. Singer Erdley?
Yes.
Mrs. Butcher Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes. Thank you. Moving on, under that same spirit of the agenda, item B is a resolution authorizing the sale of property at Lanes Run Business Park. Again, with us tonight, we have Commonwealth Tool and Manufacturing, one of our local success stories.
Mayor, I need to excuse.
You need to
myself,
recuse yourself?
please.
Well, please do.
Thank you.
Again, Jack Connor, I would like to present to the mayor and the city council a contract. Copies there, sir. I also would like to, just the liberty of this contract is in Lanes Run Business Park. Boy, how I like maps.
Yes.
So, I've seen that one before. the contract is actually in two distinct areas on the map that you have in front of you. The first one is for 14.08 acres, of which half of that falls in Phase 2. I'm being general here, about half falls in Phase 1. The other portion is 1.99 acres, which is at the top of your map. We begin with the 1.99. The 1.99 acres is undevelopable property. You'll see a blue line stream going through the middle of that. We are suggesting that the city sell that to Commonwealth Tool and Machine, represented by the owner, Ms. Charlene Whitlock. The precedent I'm utilizing is the same thing that council approved for Ciron Holdings on Barkley. There we had an acre and a half that's undevelopable because of the flood area. We sold that acre and a half for $15,000. So I just did the numbers and came up with $20,000. The other 1408 is worth $25,000 an acre, which is what we have been selling property. Let me just, those of you who don't know, I'm sure that most of you do, CTM is now located in Stamping Ground. They have, however, had a facility, a warehouse space that they did trial runs on product in Frankfurt. They have now since moved from Frankfurt. They're now located in a 60,000 square foot facility on Triport Road. They are known for robotics, PLCs or programmable logic controllers, automation systems, CNC, the whole thing, water jets, etc. So this is a project that we have been working on for quite some time, quite a long time. So we're here to present the contract to you. If you have any questions that I can answer, I should be more than happy to do so. Ms. Whitlock can answer any questions that you may have. Also, one thing I do want to say in relationship to this project, there is no incentive involved. That's why we are here not dealing with a NICS code, we're dealing with the company itself. No KBI, strictly a straight land acquisition at this point in time. Yes, sir.
We're extremely proud of this project and the resulting 100,000 square foot building that's being anticipated. We have been dealing with Ms. Whitlock for some time and discussing how this could be positioned within the business park, our expansion plans, and how that affected their plans. So given that this property lies partially in Phase 1 and partially in what we've been referring to as Phase 2, we thought it entirely fair that since we've been dealing with Ms. Whitlock from the beginning at $25,000 an acre, that we honor that through this entire transaction for the acreage in Phase 1 and Phase 2. So that's part of what we're bringing tonight. It does involve Phase 2, but we think we're in an obligated position to honor that original price.
Do you need a motion, Mayor?
Well,
I would be glad to give you one.
thank you. And we're there's some details in the resolution. It's
Do you want me to read it?
no, it's 14.08 acres at $25,000 an acre,
Pretty clear.
and 1.99 acres for $20,000. Total
This is
price
subject
of $372,000.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Never read a resolution with you.
Do you want me to read
No.
It's your over her shoulder.
All that matters, right?
The money's right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done.
Done, done,
Thank you
done.
very much.
Good deal.
Did Jack, you have a second?
I do,
customer?
sir. Yes, sir.
It's a good evening for Lanes Run Business Park. Oh, and we can welcome Connie back in too. Would you?
He's got the budget done, I'd say.
You're welcome.
You spent some tonight, though.
You're welcome.
I'm kind of,
Hurting right now?
Is your chest going?
I think I'm tempted to join you on this.
To the clerk, yes, I'm just letting you observe
absolutely.
the official documents.
This particular contract that I presented to the mayor and obviously to the council is an exercise of a first right of refusal on the part of Country Boy Brewing. So the map that you have, please ignore, I don't have a map in front of me, but ignore
This one?
Ignore the little yellow, it looks like a little yellow road.
Rectangle.
That's just a part of the plat, and that, as we go through process of purchasing, or other clients purchasing property, if that's a part of the plat, we just delete that as we go through when we actually plat the property. So, the first right of refusal talked about 4 acres. It actually turns out to be, as a result of working with Jeff Beagle and Daniel Harrison, 4.3 acres plus or minus. So that's exactly what you have before you, is to exercise that first right of refusal. As it relates to the project itself, at this point in time, we have not. That is, the Business Park Authority has, and by the way, I apologize. Everything that we have presented to you has been approved by the Business Park Authority in a meeting last Friday morning. I apologize. I should have said that to begin with. We do not have a preliminary development plan in process with Country Boy. So, as I said, this is just the exercise of that, with the expectation that there will be an expansion at some point in time in the future.
It's amazing that they've already outgrown
Yes, sir.
Isn't it?
what's there.
I think when you told him when the road goes through, he gets ready for it.
He's getting ready for it, and this is another example of a Phase 1 sale. And
Sir.
these proceeds at our discretion will go toward the debt that's outstanding on Phase 1.
Good job, good plan.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Thank you. All right. Any questions for Jack?
Questions?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
My deepest appreciation to all of you for allowing this to be moved up on the agenda. I really thank you. And Walt, Mr. Jones with Liggett, really thanks you. So I appreciate it. You all have a great evening.
Thank you, Jack.
Am I okay to go back to?
Tracy, I'd like you to report, I didn't vote on that, I was recusing myself from the vote.
Oh.
I am somewhat related to Daniel.
Done. Thank you. If we could resume the order of the agenda, mayor's comments. So you don't escape them, you just delay them a little bit. I'll run through just a couple of general mayor's comments before I actually get into the presentation of the budget. Let's see, this last weekend, just a recap. Gosh, there was so much to do around here. There was Super Recycling Day. Police Department had the 5K with guts. All over Facebook, I see Mother's Day pictures, prom pictures, and it's the last council meeting before election. But other than that, I don't know what's going on.
It was very, very nice with the groundbreaking out there too.
Yes, that was a nice ceremony.
Very nice.
Thank you. That was glad the council could be here, and for those who couldn't be here, we have your shovels tonight.
Yay, yay.
Mayor, they can dig themselves out of this budget. can't
They can dig their way out of this budget. That's exactly right. Also delighted to let the council know that this week, beginning on the 13th, is actually National Police Officer Week. And tomorrow is Peace Officer Memorial Day. And we will be laying a wreath on Courthouse Square, is that right? We're doing that Monday. That's right, we're doing that Monday. But we do acknowledge Peace Officer Memorial Day.
Wonder what time of day.
I'll address the cemetery wall during the budget. The only other item I wanted to mention, just in our effort to always be as on the right foundation procedurally and with Robert's Rules of Orders and stuff, council has a couple of times used a motion to table to stop discussion of an issue. And actually, if we look very carefully, because technicalities matter, tabling an issue only tables it until the next general meeting when it must be brought back for discussion. Now, that's not my intention tonight. I think council did what they intended to do. But in the future, if we table something to stop conversation, it will come back up at the next meeting. The correct parliamentary procedure will be to postpone indefinitely. Would be the correct motion. Just as we go forward, that's the way we would do that. A motion to postpone indefinitely could be overridden by the next council meeting by a change council vote. Each time the tabling motion has been done, there have been 7 council members present. It's only been done twice, and there's been 7 council members present. So just want us to be careful about the way we do that in the future. So the education of your mayor continues. You're welcome. Okay, if we could get into the budget presentation. Do they actually have a budget document, Sasha? They do have a budget document.
We
That's
do.
good. Does the media have a budget document? Okay, good.
You want the PowerPoint to go forward, you just point.
Okay, we're good. Thank you. I'm sorry, I've got to talk you all to death presenting the budget, but it's the way we understand it best. The cover letter addresses a lot of the major points, and of course, there's exhausting detail in all of the pages. A couple of points up front before we actually get into the numbers. For me and Stacy, it's a really great evening to get to present the budget. We've worked on this a lot, and I know some people would think it's a crazy thought, but it's actually a little bit fun to present a budget and understand how we're going to fund ourselves for the next year. This is the 4th budget that Stacy Clark and the Finance Committee and I have prepared together. So we've learned a lot in 4 years, and I think the process is getting not easier, but it's given better results each time. So I'd like to thank Stacy, thank the Finance Committee, and also thank each of our department heads, because they're the ones that largely drive this process by telling us what they need. The budget process that we have put in place is where we ask our department heads to advocate for their departments. We want to hear what they think the future of their departments are and what resources they'll need. Now, that means we frequently have to dial those back in budget conversations, but we understand a lot better when we approach it that way. I also want to tell the council that we have met again with each department head since we've drafted the budget to review with them what is in the budget for their department and what is not. So I don't think there will be any surprises to our department heads tonight. I would characterize this as a conservative budget. We've taken a fairly cautious approach during this budget year due to the amount of uncertainty. We got a lot of relief with the pension phase-in bill, and that truly saved us $900,000 worth of cash. So it was a significant benefit to us that we got the pension phase-in. But there are also other uncertainties out there that we want to feel our way through this budget year and understand circumstances better before we get any more aggressive than we are tonight. Because of that, this budget will include very few additional positions. We've been very careful about adding additional personnel this year. The only place where we are adding some personnel in fairly significant numbers is in Public Works, where we've increased our size and we've increased our road miles, but we've never increased head count at Public Works, so we're trying to address some of those needs. We're also asking Public Works to work with us always better about keeping the city clean, and we may need some more bodies there. We will see in this budget that we're going to recommend purchasing necessary equipment for each of the departments, and there's some fairly strong capital purchases where we're still playing catch up just a little bit. We also also continue to evaluate our path toward recycling. And you'll see a specific reference under the recycling portion of the budget where Robert is recommending that we buy a new rear-loading garbage truck, which will be the transport vehicle for us to use with recycling. Very pleased that as we go through this budget, you'll see that we have fully funded our two major capital commitments. Our two largest ones being Lanes Run Business Park and the 911 system. And each of those are fully funded in this budget.
It was nice to see that 911 system come under about $1 million something.
About
More
a
like
million.
3 million.
$1.5 million, $1.5 million for us and $1.5 million for the county.
About $1.5 million.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. And it brings me to a really key point that I want the council to understand. When we started this budget process 4 years ago, we were just entering the first of the incentive years, the $2.5 million incentive years. And we talked with the council then about our plan, the plan that Stacy and I brought to you then, that for the first 4 years, we would anticipate taking $1.5 million from prior year fund balance to balance the budget. And we've done that for the first 3 years. My concern has been, when were we going to be able to wean ourselves off of that subsidy that we allowed ourselves for 4 years? And I'm delighted to tell you that we're doing it this year. We said we would need to do it for 3 years. For 4 years, we're only going to do it for 3. So, with the exception of the 911 system and the Lanes Run Business Park, and those expenses that we've already committed to spend from prior year balance, we've fully balanced this budget within the budget year. We're no longer taking a subsidy from fund balance to balance our budget. And I just couldn't be more proud of that fact, that instead of taking 4 years to do this, we've done it in 3 years. So thank you to the Finance Committee and the department heads for helping us be disciplined enough to do that. Going to walk through a PowerPoint presentation now about, it's going to give us a pretty detailed look at what's in the budget, and we're also going to point out to you what's not in the budget. So everything a department head has requested that we haven't funded, we're going to show you tonight. So you can see it all, along with our recommendations for what we do fund. As we go through this, to me it's a more helpful exercise than trying to labor through every line item of a document like this. Toward the end of the PowerPoint presentation, there'll be some pie charts that give us information on our other fund balances. Stacy's prepared to walk us through what all of those detailed fund balances are. And then you all will have 3 weeks to devour this document before we meet again to have first reading. So, first page. This is going to be a real long presentation at that point.
I'll fix it.
It's always technical stuff.
Okay, back to the paper. I'm glad to see you on both ends of seas. I do see we got a clean back.
New,
Looks good. Brighter, isn't it?
it's a lot brighter, like cleaner feeling. Doesn't do much for the glare. There we go. What we're going to go through, just tell you what we're going to look at, a fairly detailed look at revenues. We're going to look at personnel cost and needs, assess all the capital expenditure requests, our operating expenditure reviews, look at the environmental service fund, and analyze our use of prior year revenues. So I think globally, we'll get a pretty good picture of what this is all going to show us. Thank you. Under general fund revenue trends, you can see we've been on a nice trend line up. It was interrupted by the unusual revenue we received from one corporate citizen in 2016. That was a restatement of a prior year's revenue. You recall that influx of cash that we received. Absent that peak, which was kind of an artificial event since it was a restated tax year, it'll make for a better looking trend line. We've probably slightly underestimated 2018 revenue, but that will true up as we look at actual numbers. You will, the detail that you don't have is this chart takes us from 2009, when we had general fund revenue of $17,600,000, through our projection for this year, which is $26,274,000. Occupational license fee trends, it's our largest single line item, and it trends correctly. We've been very careful with the way we budgeted net profits, just because they're harder to predict. But what Stacy and I have done, we've had conversations as much as we can with Toyota. We have looked at detailed analysis of our largest taxpayers for these same months last year and tried to draw a pretty close bead on where we think those will be. But we wanted you to see those trend lines. Under the salary and benefits overview, we're delighted to recommend to you that each of our employees receive a 3% salary increase. And for our lowest paid employees, we would like for that raise to be a minimum of $1,000. We did this last year, and I think that extra little pool of money so everyone could achieve a full $1,000 raise cost us $4,000 or $5,000. Actually, it was very little money to protect our lowest paid employees. You'll notice that our CERS rates have increased by 12%. Our employee benefit rates for medical, dental, and vision stayed the same. We're budgeting for a slight increase in medical and dental contributions, but we've covered those within the operating budget. Workers' compensation increased to $35,000. The total cost of all our raises in this budget is $316,000. Is what the raise cost us. So that you'll have very specific information. No employee is receiving a raise differently than what we've told you from these across the board raises, with the exception, two exceptions. We added $5,000 to the victim of crime advocacy position to get that salary up to, I think, $35,000. It's pretty low. The only other salary that we adjusted beyond the 3% raise is the assistant at Public Works. For some reason, was making $500 less than the other assistants in other departments, and we equalized their salaries. So she will get a $1,500 raise rather than the 3% raise, but it's minimal. Everyone else, every other employee falls within those ranges. Personnel overview. The only new employees that we've suggested in this budget are 4 maintenance workers for Public Works and a crew chief. And they've just been down so long that we think they need that many employees. We'll have time in the next 3 weeks. If any of these numbers concern you, we'll have time to sit down and talk about them. In dispatch, we'll convert one dispatcher to a shift supervisor. They need a shift supervisor on all 3 shifts. They do not have one for the second shift. That will not be a new hire, but it will be an additional responsibility for an existing. The positions that we did not fund for this year, the police department asked for 2 police officers. The fire department asked for 4 firefighters and an assistant fire chief. Dispatch asked for 4 dispatchers. And Public Works and Sanitation asked for a 2nd administrative assistant. I think the police department and the fire department and dispatch made good cases for adding new positions. The police department, just to keep up with growth and keep up with head count and the ratio with our population. In the fire department, we've had long conversations with the leadership about their desire to start building head count toward the day when we add another fire station. Hence the nature of their request. I think it's important for the council to realize that as we began to review the budget, we had $1.3 million in new employee requests. We knew we weren't going to be able to reach all of those, so we put them where we thought they would be the most beneficial. This is where I'd like to emphasize that we have, in every year we've been here, we've brought to the council an opportunity to amend the budget halfway through the budget year. Take a look at 6 months of operations, and then in the 7th month, be able to look at, can we amend the budget? And we've been able to add some things back into the budget at that mid-year review. I think it's reasonable for us to do a serious review of these additional personnel positions at mid-year to see what our budget position is. And I'm not blowing these requests off. We've considered them and would like to pick them back up at mid-year. We have not recommended them in this budget. Under capital expenditures, I mentioned that we've included the Lanes Run Business Park split with the county. We'll talk later in the meeting about an engineering contract for Water Street that we funded. The radio system is fully funded, split with the county. The entrance off East Main Street for Creekside Elementary School, you may have already received an invitation to that groundbreaking. This was our original commitment for this elementary school. We made this commitment in similar fashion to what Scott County Fiscal Court did for the entrance to the high school off Betsy Way. In the county's case, they were reimbursed by the state for building that entrance. We expect the same to happen here. Now, in a few minutes, I want to come back to this school entrance and talk about it just a little bit more. But for right now, this is what is funded. We have fully funded the Cardinal Drive CMAQ grant match. We have funded the TAP grant match. And we have carried forward our South 25 sewer line extension contribution of $250,000. We have gone through the scanning and the evaluation of City Hall. That was the first phase of that contract. We asked them to come back with what a next phase would look like. And I'm including this number only as a placeholder. It is in the budget. My idea of renovating City Hall for somewhere between $3.5 to $4 million, the architects tell me isn't going to happen. That the most we'll do for that much money is a prioritized list of improvements. And that a full-scale revamp of this building, as we have discussed, will cost in the $6 to $7 million range. I don't have funding for that proposed. I'm not proposing that we do that this year. But I have put a placeholder in this budget of $350,000 for City Hall architectural fees, which is in the range that they quoted us. This will come back to council before it is spent, but it is in here as a placeholder. I want to bring that specifically to your attention. Under our enterprise fleet management program, we're getting one vehicle for the city engineer. The fire department's getting kind of a heavy-duty pickup truck to carry some of their equipment. Pleased that the police department will get 16 vehicles through the enterprise lease program. So their fleet is being modernized and can be kept on a 4-year rotation. David, we're going to replace a couple of Ford Explorers with Toyota Highlanders. They're already pricing those. And we finally have worked out all the details to get the chassis for the second hook lift truck for Rockwood. You recall, we took that off of a budget a couple of months ago because we wanted some technical assurances, and we've since gotten those. And then the cemetery will get themselves a heavy-duty truck with a snow plow and salt box. All the general government expenditures here are ones that we've already approved, except for Creekside Elementary and the architectural piece. Moving on with capital expenditures. In the police department, we've got a bunch of tasers that are at the end of their service life, and their batteries don't hold charge. So we're looking at buying 17 tasers, Chief, does that sound right? And the mobile data terminals, docks, and radios for the 16 new police cars we're allowing for the purchase there. In the fire department, it's expensive but necessary. 55 sets of fire gear, $120,000. We learn now that dirty fire gear carries carcinogens. Firefighters need clean turnout gear, and they need 2 sets. We need to be washing the set and having a set to wear all the time. We've recommended purchasing them a rescue airbag set. Those are the large airbags that they can slide under a vehicle, then pump them up and raise the vehicle. Ours are kind of worn. You accepted a grant at the last council meeting to buy a fire gear washing machine, so instead of us buying 2, we backed that up to 1. The skids unit will be a pump unit that they can load on a flatbed truck and fight brush fires and things of that nature. We like for them to keep their own yards mowed, so we're replacing 2 zero-turn mowers, and we're recommending that the bays be painted at stations 2 and 3 just to maintain the appearance of those bays. Under the city engineer and stormwater budget, we've included $25,000 to complete the repair of the broken retaining wall down here in the court alley. We hope once that's fixed, we can repave Court Alley, maybe get it lighted better, and clean it up and make it a more friendly pedestrian area. And we're continuing to show $25,000 toward the repair of the subsidence issue that we have with the stone wall at Royal Spring Park. Eddie is also getting us estimates on, we've been concerned for some time that the spillway at Royal Spring Park has not been dredged. It's not supposed to be mud all the way to the surface. It should be a considerable running stream of water. Eddie's getting an engineering company in to give us core samples of what that sludge looks like, so we can get real prices on what it'll take to clean it out and start cleaning up Royal Spring Park.
Mayor, I feel like that's been done before. Maybe you recall, somebody else recalls. Was the water company involved?
Water company cleaned their basins upstream from the park. And I had some minimal hope and expectation that it might include ours too, but it definitely did not.
I mean, I feel like this has been done before as well, but I just can't.
Something we'll talk to Bob about before he leaves too. By the way, Bob's last day, June 1st. Are y'all aware of that? Bob Wilhite.
Who's taking over?
A young man, Chase Azevedo. I met him last week. Seemed like a real impressive young man. Moving on with capital expenditures, under Public Works, we want to complete that hook lift system for Public Works. Those are the removable body beds before we can change it from a salt truck to a dump bed. We have included $75,000 to replace our bucket truck. Y'all may have seen our big lumbering red bucket truck. That is no longer, I think, past certification. It failed the last certification. That's kind of important with the bucket truck. So.
Can you get anything out of it? Can you get anything out of it? Yeah.
We do not intend to buy a new bucket truck. Robert's looked at price ranges where used bucket trucks, given our frequency of usage, makes sense. And that's right. Robert asked for this tractor last year. We didn't buy it then. We thought we would buy it this year. And he needs a commercial mower of $10,000. As he does every year, Robert needs a semi-load full of Herbies and an automated side-loading garbage truck. Again, as I mentioned, under recycling, we're adding a rear-loading garbage truck. We're using a rear-loading truck now to make the haul to Lexington. It needs replacing. We've always got the need for a rear loader truck for the more crowded parts of our business routes. But this makes sense as we move closer to recycling. Under the cemetery, we're going to buy a monument handle. I think I told y'all I was pretty shocked that we didn't own one. Well, we're going to after this budget. And we've gotten pretty detailed price estimates on the cemetery wall now. Those bids came in at a total of $279,000. David, they're still working on our renderings. I told them we weren't going to approve it until we got renderings. We budgeted in $200,000 to replace that wall. There was a very large contingency fee that I thought was bigger than it needed to be included in that number. And there was also $50,000 for what appears to me to be the sidewalk behind the wall again, that we'd have no intention of replacing. So we're comfortable with this $200,000 placeholder to fix the cemetery wall.
Mayor, several questions concerning that. Is it just the space where the walls in need of repair right now, or are we looking at the
No,
entire
it'd be end to end.
end to end?
Yes, Randy.
And if it all goes well, we're hoping, correct, we're hoping to have that done before the end of this year,
Oh, I
if not
expect
sooner.
I expect to see it midsummer. We've looked at it too long.
It's getting worse every day, too.
I don't have a good answer when people say, why is this taking so long? And still under capital expenditures. Oh, these are the unfunded ones. I told you we'd see what we did pay for and what we did not pay for. We took out the fire washing machine because they got a grant for it. We bought a lot of other stuff. We did not buy a rescue boat and trailer, primarily because there's an active grant window that the fire department can apply for this via grant. If they're not funded in August or September through that grant, then we can come back at mid-year and consider that request. But I'd rather give them a chance for a grant to come through than jump into paying it too quick. Fire committee will recognize for the last 2 years, the fire department has asked that we start considering the needs assessment for the ultimate phase, or Station 4. What I've asked the department to do this year, we did not fund this needs assessment in this year's budget because we think we've got a year's worth of work that we can do internally. With the fire department and internal staff and the fire committee, we can look at maps, we can look at growth trends. We can begin to generate the type of data that a consultant's going to ask us for anyway. So we can do a year's worth of internal work with the idea of perhaps picking this up in the next fiscal year's budget, and then begin a serious conversation about Station 4 and how we'll pay for that. Under operating expenditures, as I mentioned, we've increased property and liability insurance budgets by about 10%. Interlocal expenses increased by about $328,000. Remarkably, that's about the same amount they increased last year. But Stacy does track those things. Now, this next little group of items is where the Finance Committee and Stacy and I spent a lot of time talking about. Just because we all have soft spots in our heart for the good work that's being done in the community, but we also recognize it's a very slippery slope for the council. And so we've talked about this a lot, but these are my recommendations. That the Amen House, that's addressing a key need within our community, be funded at the amount of $10,000. That is a new funding for us. Fiscal Court currently funds Amen House at $15,000. Given the same philosophy about being worried about hunger in our community, or being worried about homelessness in our community, we've recommended $10,000 to the Gathering Place mission. Again, the Scott County Fiscal Court funds this, I believe, at $15,000. After years and years of requests, we have increased slightly the proposed contribution to the Georgetown Scott County Museum from $20,000 to $25,000. And then I'll drop down to Transform Scott County. I think there's some remarkable work being done there that is figuring directly into a couple of city initiatives, and I think that they've earned that $5,000 consideration. Now, if I could go back to the line item second from the bottom, that's a brand new line item for you. And I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about it. Each of you have received questions from citizens and parents about school safety and what can be done and what is the shared responsibility of the community with the school system. I don't feel as though I've had adequate answers for people who have asked me those questions. It's a school responsibility, but the community has some involvement in this as well. I sat down with Superintendent Kevin Hubb and Judge Executive George Lesby, and we talked about school safety in general and what could be done to best protect children in the school system when we have limited budgets to spend. Our school board has not shown an interest for a variety of reasons, for their own strategic decisions in metal detectors, and we know we can't afford school resource officers in every school. But we began a conversation, and we actually, at Dr. Hubb's recommendation, I asked Chief Swanigan to meet with Sheriff Hampton, with Dwayne Ellison from the school system, and Billy Roberts from the school system, to explore a concept that Chief Bossy had come up with about us creating a small pool, a very small pool, of certified retired police officers who have just recently left our employment, where we know that they might be available. If we work with county government and the school system to create a small pool of money to use for part-time retired officers to be strategically assigned to schools during high-profile events, and a way to get more law enforcement protection into the school system without unnecessarily burdening the police department's budget. We'd almost do it through the separate fund of paying part-time certified officers. The conclusion that Chief Swanigan and the school representatives came up with is that we should begin a trial program of this kind, and that if we could fund it initially with $50,000, we can get started. We can see how this works. We can see what kind of benefit we can gain. We can see how long those funds will last, and then we can evaluate that program. This isn't a fix-all, and it's probably not enough money, but it is a step that law enforcement and the school system think can be a benefit to our community. It needs fleshing out, but that's our general idea, and we'd like to include some money in this budget to be able to pursue the concept.
Is the county going to go in on this also?
This idea came to this level of conversation after the county finished their budget, but they've been involved in the conversations from the beginning, and the judge wants more information, obviously, but he's more than willing to be a participant once we provide him with the right information.
Mayor, I guess this would be at the high school, just during the hours that school's open, students are there.
We think that each high school is clearly going to need a school resource officer. And right now, Georgetown provides one, and Scott County Sheriff's Office provides one. The school system reimburses the city and the county for at least a portion of their salary. We get fully reimbursed for when school's in session. We cover when school's not in session, and we cover health insurance. So if we can have a full-time school resource officer in each of the 2 high schools, and then if we can create a pool, a small pool of 4 or 5 or 6 officers that we can assign to float to all the other schools. You know, today the city officers at Scott County High School and the Scott County Sheriff's Officer floats to every other school in the system. When the other high school gets open, we can see having a full-time SRO at each of the high schools, and then let our pool float to the other schools. Very early, but we thought it had gotten enough acceptance that if we could fund it, we can learn a lot more about it. Okay, if we go to the next slide. She already has. There it is. Stacy, we're now at the pie charts. The pie charts to me are really helpful, even with the glare.
Like the lights out, get some repair off.
I think there are a lot.
They're the windows.
I think it's a window. You might try the lights on.
Oh, that,
Shades are not
it helps.
dark enough.
They really aren't.
We'll fix it.
But it's Stacy's arranged these in account order, which is real helpful for us because you see police, fire, and dispatch all grouped together.
Yep.
And you can very neatly see where more than half our budget goes. We put our money where our mouth is, and that's public safety. 53% of the general fund is spent on public safety. The next largest expenditure is at 20%, which includes interlocals, county services, revenue commission, parks and rec, P&Z, all things that we share the cost of, where otherwise we'd be paying them ourselves. I think it's significant that as you look at this pie chart that only 10% of the budget is spent on administrative, executive, legislative, and clerk. So the least expensive parts of city government are sitting here right now. Stacey, any detail there for any of that you need to touch on?
No, we're talking about next,
Okay. Up one more. Other funds. We intentionally took the business park fund and the capital projects fund out of this pie chart because they're so big they distorted the chart. The rest of the chart didn't mean anything. Oh, yeah. We're good, right there. You're good.
All right. Like the mayor said, we just wanted to talk about, I was going to look at the document with you on a few of these. Like we said, the capital projects, business park, those large projects are distorting. But if you go to page 33 of your actual budget document, we will flip through a few of these other funds just so you can see those totals. I'll give you a second to get there. So with the business park fund, if you look at the expenses, we have the balance of our engineering contract and of course the amounts coming in for the construction of the infrastructure, some utilities that will need to be installed. So total project expenses of $7,535,500. And below that you will see our annual debt service payments of $72,195. As of right now, I don't have anything budgeted for sale of property. Obviously, as that occurs, we bring it back into the budget through amendments. And then I believe if it's phase one sales, we can utilize that to pay the debt rather than a transfer from the general fund. So as of right now, the revenue in the business park fund is the county's half of the construction cost. Our half of the construction cost is a transfer from general fund and funding the debt service. Any questions on the business park fund? The next one is the alcohol fund on page 34. We've evaluated those revenues and estimate $980,000 in regulatory fee revenue. With that, we have allocated 25% of the city clerk's office salary to the alcohol fund, especially since our clerk serves as the ABC administrator. And the police department, we have allocated 16.2% of their salaries and benefits to the alcohol fund. And then we have on page 36 some specific alcohol program expenditures, such as buy money, new breathalyzers, education, etc., of $25,000. And part of the overtime in the alcohol fund is also overtime for special events that serve alcohol. So we have that, so you can see the revenue and expenses equal there.
And this becomes a very important bit of accounting for the city, given that we're very limited on what we can spend the alcohol revenue for. So this is done through a memo establishing these percentages, and then we track it pretty carefully.
Page 37 is the municipal aid fund. Our hope is to spend this every year to pave roads. So for next year, we have simply budgeted pretty much an in and out of the anticipated revenue from the state of $564,326, and then a little bit of interest that we earn on the money to go with it. So it's spent for improving our current roads. Page 38, our local government economic assistance fund. We receive approximately $21,000 is our estimated revenue. We have a little bit of money left over from this year, so we actually have expenditures for $46,050. In the past, we've used this to buy the retroreflectometer, I think if I'm saying that correctly, that tests our street signs. We can also use it for striping as well. Page 39 is our drug forfeiture fund. We currently are not receiving money from the federal programs, only state. We've budgeted $20,000. The expenses are much higher in the drug fund because they've built up a balance over the years. So the current revenue plus the estimated balances, it actually has expenditures of $310,000, and the police department has restrictions on how they can spend that money and follow those. Page 40 begins our grant fund. Most of these are carry forward or recurring grants. VOCA, highway safety, bulletproof vest. Those are all of our police department grants. Public Works receives a litter abatement grant every year. Under community services, as of right now, we have the balance of our KYTC grant for Ward Hall, finishing that up, as well as our CMAQ and TAP grants. We know part of that work will be done this year, but we will adjust that as that happens later. And then carrying forward, we made a drawdown recently on our KIA loan for the South Sewer extension to hold that money. So the balance of that is carried forward to next year. And then we're going to skip past environmental services for a minute because we have a slide to talk about that. And we will go to page 50. Talk about the landfill fund. Landfill fund is still just kind of left over from operations of when we owned the double culvert landfill. We have a balance left over from the sale of that property, and until that balance runs out, we're using it to pay the leachate pumping cost at Sims and any environmental surveying costs that we have. So eventually that money will run out, and the general fund will pick up the cost of those leachate utilities, which is a monthly bill we get from GMWSS. Page 51 is our cemetery fund. Not too much change with the revenues. They're a little hard to predict, but as always, the city and county split any difference. We don't have sufficient revenues to cover all of our operating expenses. And as the mayor noted before, the cemetery expenses are a little higher this year because we have budgeted for the reconstruction of the wall at $200,000. If we get any of that completed before June 30, that would obviously reduce our commitment in next year's budget. But for now, that's in there. Not too many changes in their budget other than the request for the monument handler and the wall. And then finally, the capital projects fund, which is another large piece of the pie. That's the $10 million piece of the pie, which includes all that long list that the mayor talked about earlier, mainly the radio system. That's the $8,990,000, which is split with the county. So you can see the county's portion of that as revenue, and then the general fund covering all of the other capital projects with a transfer. But most of these have carried forward from this year and been approved this year. Those are all of the other funds. And then, as the mayor said, we've got a slide for environmental services, so we'll.
Oh, we did.
So this is back on page 42 if you want to follow along in the budget document.
Environmental Services Fund. Your slide shows you current fund balance. Environmental Services Fund is evolving so quickly in different ways that we had a chart in here that showed it just nosediving into the ground, but we just didn't think that was the right image. But environmental services, it continues to be something we're trying to understand, and we're evaluating the financial controls that we've got in place and trying to see what spills out from that. Important that we know the recycling expenditures are split 50-50 with the county, which makes that rear load garbage truck a little easier to buy, as I mentioned earlier. And the line on there that is important, that last one, stormwater expenditures are simply covered by 100% by transfer from general fund. Anything else in particular on that slide, Trey? Session? So, those are the high points of the budget. Tried to give you an indication of what's in here, what's not in here, and if over the next week or two, if you communicate with me or David or Connie or Stacy or any of us about questions or concerns. Pardon? Oh, if you would, if every council member could get a copy of the electronic copy of the PowerPoint.
Good budget.
Anything Finance Committee wants to add?
No, sir, you did a great job.
I agree.
Lacy, thank you, ma'am. We've met our obligation on the date of getting the budget presented. And but for the special call meeting due to Memorial Day, we'll have this approved well in time by the budget cycle. For whatever personnel changes were necessary, when we have second reading of the budget ordinance, Megan will bring you first reading of the personnel ordinance. We want to keep them in the right sequence. We have to fund the positions before we ask you to approve the personnel ordinance. But we can have first reading of that personnel ordinance the same night we have second reading of the approval of the budget. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stacey. You put away the budget notebook. Oh, that is up to that. Thank you.
How well we going, Mayor?
Mayor, it's only 5:20.
We're zipping right along.
We started at 3 o'clock. 4 o'clock. I think I can figure out where I am on this agenda now. I think Miss Sherry Williams' turn. We made her sit through the whole budget presentation. Oh, Sherry Nichols.
Yeah, let's get the right name.
Sherry.
been called a lot worse.
Sherry Nicholas, would you come to the podium, please? Thank you.
I am here to request approval for a bid for cameras to replace the ones that we have at the pavilion. We did receive 2 bids. The bid that the board approved and has recommended is from Kentuckiana Technologies. The final bid was for $32,843.05, and we had budgeted in the capital budget $35,000, so it came in under all these things. I think you should have a copy of that.
We do. And I assume we approved this, Sherry Nichols, because it's on our building.
It's on our building, and it's over 20,000, so anything that's over that, him and I always bring this for. But it is in the capital budget, so.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
County anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Sherry.
All that time for 1 minute of fame. Miss Nichols.
Oh, yeah. Miss Nichols, then I blew that. Okay. Let's see. Item 9 on our agenda from our city engineer, one of our most favorite things to talk about, and that is a municipal order approving a change order for the Mulberry Street paving project. Technically, let me point out that this is not a change order.
Forget E and F. Come back to them.
And Mr. Arehart.
Water Street,
Arehart.
CMAQ.
Yeah.
Don't forget your executive order for
And your
Arehart.
executive order.
6B.
That's what the budget presentation just does to you.
Yeah.
Just totally
Mayor, you-
takes off and everything else.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, it
you flipped it so much you've lost some of them.
Mayor, I propose you go back to 6B.
B.
and
6
come
feet
on
and come
down.
on down,
Come
Mayor.
on down.
Okay.
All in favor?
Of going back to 6B.
He's stressing how to give a budget presentation.
He did a good job now.
Yes.
It takes a village. Item 6B is an executive order reappointing Jim Arehart to the Georgetown Housing Authority Board of Directors. Jim's current chair of the Housing Authority. He's finished 1 term, and he's now eligible for a second term.
Motion for approval, Mayor.
Thank you. And second.
That was.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Boy, if you just follow the numbers.
Now we're at E.
E.
8E.
Municipal order approving a contract for Water Street Engineering Services. This is the one where they sent me a contract and it was just a lot more money than what we wanted to spend. So we sat down with them and asked them to pare back their scope of work considerably. Twice. But there are certain things we really want to know. We really want some traffic counts, and we really want some an analysis of what traffic's there, and we want a traffic study done so we can make some good decisions. Parking study. So that's what this contract for.
Will that include some of the Kentucky Utilities property in terms of their study or their planning?
It certainly should. It certainly should. Thank you. And seconds. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item F is pretty easy to say yes to. It's a resolution approving an amendment to the CMAQ grant. And the state actually realized that our original grant amount did not include enough money to do all the design work. So they contacted us and asked us if we would take a little more.
Well, I'll make a motion, Mayor.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Thank you.
How much more?
A little more.
A little.
A little.
How much is a little?
I'll answer that in just a minute. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
He wanted to get the motion before he says how much it was.
5,300.
We'll take whatever.
Here's the CMAQ.
14,000. That's good.
14,000 more.
We didn't have to go ask. They just called us up and kind of let us know about that.
We know they got money.
There you go. Now I can get down to item 9. Legitimately, city engineer, a municipal order approving a change order for the Mulberry Street paving project. More than a change order, this is actually us changing our scope of work. We have had unit prices the way we do all our paving, and we simply measure the amount of distance and apply the unit prices. In this case, we had not planned on replacing the curb all the way down the length of Mulberry Street. And if you walk down beside the Presbyterian Church, the curb is gone. And it's
Been there.
completely, it's disintegrated. So we wanted to replace the curb, and that's the lion's share of the change order. That's $11,000 change order. Then we will pave Mulberry to the new curb.
Yeah.
The other part of the change order is listed as sidewalk, and I want to be very clear on my understanding of that, because we don't buy sidewalk. The property owner buys sidewalk. But in this case, there are 3 on the Main Street front of the church. There are 3 curb inlets that are creating a drainage problem for them and their neighbor. So, as a part of the curb project, we're going to raise that curb right in front of the church for those 3 inlets. And we think it will solve our drainage problem, get the water rounded to run down Mulberry. When we replace the curb going down Mulberry, we think we might damage part of the sidewalk. And where one of the curb cuts is on Main Street, there's a flat sidewalk that we're going to have to raise up. And we think it's part of our project. So that's the total change order in the amount of $18,000.
Motion, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You're forgiven.
I'll second.
Wow. Motion's made and seconded.
Well, we get along so good.
All in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Good. Let's see. Item 10, dispatch. Chief, you know what dispatch is asking for in their grant application?
Thank you. Is that the CMRS?
Yes.
Is it part of any phone system?
It's the 911 dispatch.
phone
Part of the
system.
new.
It's a remote host phone system
Yeah.
upgrade at a cost of $210,000. It would yield a local match requirement of $10,500.
Oh, yeah. We're not trying to get that.
Was that a motion for approval?
Yeah.
I'll second.
And second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Moving right along.
Thank you. Let's see, after 10 comes 11.
You are on a roll.
Generally.
He's so smart.
We got a mock mail.
He makes the big bucks.
He doesn't know how much he makes.
But I will in January.
Yeah, you will. Look at your budget. You'll be good.
Either way.
Maybe.
Oh, here, Dan. Dan said, if.
He's right, too. Fire Department has a municipal order approving a contract for replacement of flooring in Station 2.
We had that in this year's current budget. I think we had around 15,000. This bid come in at 12,000 for Ocean Landing.
Good.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the low bid, $12,000.
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We're on a roll now.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you all.
Moving right on down to 12.
Robert said, I'm just sitting there.
Your turn. Your turn.
These aren't cheap generators, are they?
No, they're large enough to supply the whole building with power. We don't have anything like this currently.
We had talked about this previously. That we were all shocked, I think, to find out that Public Works did not have adequate generators to run their whole facility in case of inclement weather. And we pretty much count on them being to work all the time. So this is a municipal order approving the purchase of 2 generators in the amount of $44,000.
It's the wiring and everything. I mean, right now we're not set. Only thing we can run like 2 offices was a small generator. That's all we got.
I make the motion.
You know, we had the windstorm last year. We were down like the whole day without power. Kind of, we about to do something about this.
Mm-hmm. Good idea.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And then we'd also, you'll remember a couple of months ago, we took a hook lift system off.
Yep.
Enterprise was working with us real closely to make certain that we were buying the truck we needed before we bought the equipment to put on the truck. We've now received those assurances.
Yes.
So that municipal order is in there.
Motion made.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Mayor, from Robert's up there, I want to compliment him on how his equipment out there looks, their vehicles and stuff. We met that day, done a
Y'all
great
need-
job.
Thank you, Zip. Y'all the one getting it for it.
Yeah, but
They
you
look
all
good.
did your detailing and stuff, and it was very, very nice.
Well, they're kind of mad at me because I brought the fire department part to them, making them watch. They said they'd get on me about that. That's the fire
Yeah,
department.
but good job on you.
Well.
We like that.
Next thing we know, they'll be all red.
Yeah, that's just it.
They just
With
rub that
lights
red
on
paint
the
right on
side.
there.
Oh, goodness.
No. No, we won't do that day because the county trucks are red.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
that's true.
So our trucks are white.
We're good. We're good.
Yes, ma'am.
Can somebody, we talked about May 21st, the wreath on the courthouse, but I didn't hear what time. Did they say morning or
The wreath laying thing Monday.
Robert?
Chief.
on Monday, the 21st, the wreath on the courthouse? Do you know what time?
Is it 11 o'clock? Chief Office, does that sound right?
I just didn't want to miss it. Okay. Okay. I just thought I missed it. Thank you. And I also want to thank the Public Works Department, I guess, on filling in some of the holes on Main Street. They weren't big, deep, not resurfacing, but just there were some holes where you'd lose your part of your tire. And I really appreciate that. That was very helpful. I was kind of driving like this, dodging them.
She didn't see it.
Well, I've got one other issue that I need to discuss with the council. And it will be an item that we will have to fund in the current budget cycle, but I've not yet included it in here. I'm very pleased with the expansion of the school system and some of the new schools that are being built. And I think it's real exciting for the community. The elementary school that has been planned, and now they've taken bids for, I believe it's at Creekside Elementary, and a groundbreaking has been scheduled. You all may have received an invitation. Council has agreed to fund an entrance off of East Main Street Extended, and I think the school system makes it very clear that they are not legally, they cannot fund improvements off of school property. So the city, that's why the county was asked to construct the entrance on Betsy Way, and we were asked to construct an entrance off East Main Street Extended. And we're willing to do that at that investment level, particularly with the hope of being reimbursed. Given the nature of East Main Street Extended and the type of vehicle traffic that is on East Main Street Extended, a number of us have been concerned about school buses and concrete trucks and rock trucks being in conflict with one another. So it seems clear that some significant improvements will need to be made to East Main Extended outside of the bypass. And I don't have detailed cost estimates, but I've asked for cost estimates that I can work from, that take in unit prices. And the initial price that I've received for the improvements necessary, what this person's belief is necessary. I think policy makers need to sit down and discuss. But I've been given a preliminary price of $725,000. That does not include permits right away or relocation of any utilities. For a school that will be under construction almost immediately.
I think they're moving dirt now.
I think they are, yeah.
Well, they've already started digging.
There it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't stress over it. We just got to deal with it.
We have to deal with it.
Yeah.
We'll sit down and talk about how we approach this, but this wasn't anticipated.
We've handled unanticipated things before.
What's for sure, we can't allow a school to open on a road that's not safe.
You think the state might help us out?
I think the relationship between the state government and school system is so great right now, I wouldn't count on it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
You are right. That's
Just-
a point.
It's
That's
true.
That's a
But I'd hope
good
It
point.
is true.
the relationship between the state and council might be.
Always ask.
Always ask.
We will be
The
asking.
worst case scenarios, no, right?
Well, our senator plays a big part with transportation,
Yeah.
and he enjoys transportation, so this would be a great issue for him to get involved with and see what he can do to help.
He and I discussed this at lunch today.
You done hit the button, ain't you?
I've already hit, we're hitting it, but it is clear that improving that road needs to be a part of this council's budget for this year, and it's not in there. Simply because this came to me at such a late date, I didn't have time to put together a plan and a partnership.
Do you have time to do an amendment that you can send out to us to add it into this budget?
What Stacy and I thought the best thing to do tonight was to present the budget and plant a flag on this issue for the council and say that we're going to work on it very quickly. And I'm just not sure. But we think, given that the property's been purchased, the contract's been awarded, groundbreaking scheduled, and they're moving dirt, we've got to catch up.
Because are they planning to be open in the fall?
19, no, 19.
The next year, okay.
And the other thing that, while there'll be an elementary school first and then a middle school behind it,
More traffic.
I believe that from day one, when the elementary school opens,
Needs to
this
be
road
big.
needs to be everything it's going to be.
So you take
I'm not
that.
willing to open it with one school, much less two, unless it's right.
It'd be very, very bad. It's just not like.
It's a 22-foot road right now.
I know, I drive it.
And those trucks are pretty
This
wide.
estimate is
Crazy.
actually going to a 50-foot wide 4-lane road. Is that necessary? I don't know, but we sure need to sit down and talk about it. Anyway, I said there was one thing not in the budget.
That was a
That's
good
the
one.
issue.
It's a big one.
You know, and Mary, it doesn't have to be constructed this year. It probably might be best that it's not constructed
get
this
all
year.
that.
It might be best it's constructed next
And we
year.
might be able to fund part
You
of
know,
Part of it this year,
Right,
part of it next
Yeah.
year.
Right.
with all the construction traffic going on,
it. Yeah.
I mean, they
You're
Tear
right,
up the
Dave.
road.
probably create a lot of damage to it.
I'd
anyway.
even be willing to ask the question, if the school system's property comes up all the way behind the subdivision, could they almost have their own entrance on the bypass?
It would be limited at best, you know, like a writing.
No. Okay. Well, this is our issue, and we're going to quickly go to work and start the conversation.
Fence for those is pretty astronomical too.
We'll try to get one now.
Yeah. As a matter of
5
fact.
years.
Good.
Okay, well, that's all that I had on this agenda. I'm sorry to give you an uncertainty at the end of what's been a pretty certain evening, but we'll work on this as quickly
Been a good
as we
evening.
can. Let's see, Mark, we'll start with you. You're good. Chuck?
I don't have anything.
Good. Hi.
No, sir.
Had Susan contact me about they live at the end of Montgomery where it dead ends.
Yes.
You know, it crosses over and then it dead ends.
Yeah.
And she said she's reported it to me before and she has, but she has some cars that are sitting on the street that never get moved and a couple of people there that don't take much care of what's could be seen by all their neighbors. So if you could have code enforcement, she said last year when somebody came by, they told her that they couldn't do anything because it was a dead end street. I said, well, that's not true. It's a public street.
Sure.
They can't set the cars out there
Right.
without tags or tires down and stuff like that.
We've got some citizen lawyers out there. Did you know that?
No, they're good too.
I take it back. when
Well, you
the
done
year gets
passed your
done.
time.
I do have a couple of things in its yard. One is on the corner of Pocahontas and Seminole. The grass is this tall.
Cut it already.
And the one on the corner of,
That one's been cut.
did you cut it
No,
today?
they cut it yesterday.
Okay, my
I
bad.
stopped by and was writing down an address, and it was cut yesterday.
So what about the one that's on the corner of Rucker and South Broadway?
Cut.
I must have just,
It was yesterday. But it was
It
good that you
was.
brought those up. They've been taken.
that's what I get for going west. 460, right?
And the grass has been growing fast with the,
Oh,
this is
it's
the
really-
week,
oh,
not
the
rain
really
is just-
rain all week, so.
Then I take it back, move on.
I knew
Good
she didn't
job,
have it. I knew she didn't
city.
have anything.
Anything else?
Just tell the mayor to shut up.
She did, Tom. No. I met Marvin.
Hey, I meant Mark.
Eminem.
I don't. Does anybody know
Don't you be writing that
the
down.
light poles on Oxford Drive have been installed, and it's been some time now, but I really haven't seen any other work to complete that project. You know, the lighting.
Oxford?
Yeah. Oxford Drive.
I didn't even know there were lights there, but we'll look. We'll certainly look.
Remember, we approved it, that lighting situation. They came in and put poles in the ground, but I haven't seen anything else take place.
We better
Follow-
jog our memory. Then.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff.
I got it.
Good, she's got it. We'll look into it.
And David, it jogged my memory. Devin sent me a real helpful update at the end of last week on a lot of projects that we've got going on, and they swirl around so much you lose details. And I was going to do this under council comments, but it jogged my memory. In no particular order, the TUSA consultants for the radio stuff will be in town on May 23rd, and they will present their full recommendations to the radio committee and Judge Lusby and myself. And then once they do that, we will we enter into by our contract we will enter into a 30-day negotiation period. And at the end of that negotiation period, we'll bring an agreement to the council for your final approval. Let's see, David, we've asked for those sketches. Eddie spoke with GRW concerning the street lighting pilot projects that we wanted to get off the way, where we're looking at a handful of intersections. And they said that they would be through in about 40 days. We've approved the Water Street contract tonight. On our TAP grant, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, our RFPs went out, and we will open the RFPs on the 25th, on 5/25. We'll do a scoring meeting on 5/31, and then we think on the June 11th council meeting, we can bring the TAP stuff back to council for approval. Actually, something happening.
Yay.
CMAQ, as I indicated, they're just sent us some more money so we could finish our design. And boy, Devin and Andrew have been working real hard with the Transportation Cabinet and Ward Hall, trying to help them spend their grant money. You remember our grant money for Cardone?
Yes.
How much trouble it was for us to spend? Well, we've been trying to help Ward Hall spend theirs. And it's been difficult, but excuse me, David. Anything else?
You're good. That's it. Thank you.
Question for Andrew. I had a resident over in neighborhood, I ain't gonna say where. He has a place to park in front of his house in the driveway, but there's a neighbor next door to him got 7 or 8 vehicles. And he can't come in and park in front of his house. And I don't know whether there's anything that they can do. I mean,
You can't park a vehicle on a city street longer than 24 hours, so.
but it's bad. I mean, they're parked in the yard. They got a big old truck, and
Can't park in the yard either.
We can stop them from parking in the yard.
Which might be bad, because then I'll be more taken up on the street.
They must have a lot of teenagers.
it's over in Mount Vernon's only too.
Call code enforcement.
That's what I told him.
Yeah.
Call code enforcement, have him come by.
Yeah.
But I drove by there, and it was
We've got a few messes.
and I think there's 3 families living at one. So, I told him I'd bring it up and ask him.
If you'll get with us on the address,
I'll have to get it tomorrow and just
we'll take a look.
text it to you.
Thank you.
That kind of triggers actually something that I have too, because it's kind of downtown, there's like 3 or 4 families in one house. So is that just
There
code,
are-
or if it's a landlord leasing it out?
There are occupancy issues, but they're really high thresholds.
That's what I
It's
thought.
illegal if there are illegal divisions. You know, that code could look into that, but otherwise, just having too many people in one house is
I know,
rarely,
that's what I
it's
told this
rarely a
person.
problem.
I said
Yeah.
it's not
Where it's really frustrating for us, Polly, is when a landlord might have made physical changes to a house to make it work as a duplex, which
Know
is
nothing
against
about it.
code. But if we don't have access to the property,
I know
we've got
Some issues.
issues, but
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else, Polly? Millie?
Yes, I do. Tom, Andrew, and council members, I would like to tell you just for a minute something that's been bothering me for a while. March 14th, I filled out a survey like we all did. In the survey, I stated I would like to see a discussion of districts for the city council. I know it was brought up in 2001. It was up by about 3 council members. It was also brought up in 2009. To go back to 2001, even Donna Perry came up with 8 districts divided out with 2,000 to 2,400 people in each district. She presented it, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere in 9. I just think that we just are growing so fast and so large that districts need to be considered and worked on. I've got 7 more months on the council. I would be happy to help do whatever I could to talk about it and us try to figure it out, because everybody needs equal representation. You know, I mean, if you have districts and you live in that district, you can be the go-to person for that district. And that's just something that I've been concerned about since I put it on the survey in 2014, and I was hoping we could talk about that and try to make that happen, or at least have some more discussion on it. Because we've just, maybe in 2001 we just weren't big enough, but we've just gotten so big so fast. So I just wanted to bring it up to you all.
Thank you. Anything else come before the council?
Make a motion to adjourn. There you go.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.